Hello friends, welcome. Today I'm going to share my thoughts on the ninth house versus the 11th house in Krishnamurti Paddhati. Now, in traditional astrology, ninth house has a very special significance, and when you start reading the traditional astrology books, then you find that everywhere there is a it's mentioned that ninth house is the house that brings in the fortune, the luck, and it's the main house that brings success in life. And if somebody has to even recommend a gemstone, then usually they recommend the stone for the ninth house ruler. So but when you go into Krishnamurti, when you switch to the Krishnamurti, and when you start reading the KP astrology, then suddenly you find that the ninth house, is kind of underplayed, and Krishnamurti has not given, any special significance or status to the ninth house. So then you are confused that on one hand, the entire, stroke of luck, fortune, dependent on the ninth house, and now suddenly in KP astrology, the ninth house has no specific or no particular significance. So why this happens? So now before explaining this, I'm going to tell you a very small interesting mythological story, and this story relates to the Ravan, the king Ravan, ten-headed king of Sri Lanka. And so that's this image is from one of the temples of Ravan. And now it is said that when Ravan's son Indrajit was about to be born, and now Ravan was a very powerful king, not in the sense of physical or military power, but he had all kind of yogic powers as well. He was a devotee of Lord Shiva, and he had all kind of blessings and powers they were granted from Lord Shiva. So when Indrajit was going to be born, Ravan's son, then using his yogic power, Ravan ordered all the nine planets to line up, in the 11th house. Now, there's a very interesting, story. So, uh, so he forced all the nine, planets to line up in the 11th house, and he wanted that when Indrajit would be born, then all the planets should be in the 11th house. Now, even including Rahu and Ketu, which is astronomically not possible, but that's the humor in it, that he wanted all nine planets because Ravan knew that once the all the planets are in the 11th house, then Indrajit would become very powerful, and it would be very difficult for anyone to defeat him, because the 11th house is it's called the Labsthan, or the house of victory, and it has a huge significance for material and mundane success and prosperity. When all the other gods and the devatas, when they saw this phenomena happening, that all these the planets, they started lining up in the 11th house, then the devatas, they became very worried, and they were especially worried about the consequence that the Indrajit would be born, and then he would become arrogant and nobody would be able to defeat him. So the devatas, they pleaded with the planets to help them out. But the planets, they were very afraid of Ravan, except for one planet, and that is Saturn. So what Saturn did was that Saturn secretly, started transiting in the 12th house. It is said that Saturn, stretched one of its legs and put it in the 12th house. But Ravan, he was monitoring the lining of our planets, in the 11th house. And when he's noticed this Saturn, stretching his leg into the 12th house, that he got very angry, and So he threw, one of his weapon and cut off, one of the legs of Saturn. But unfortunately for Ravan, that leg, actually fell in the 12th house. So now when Indrajit was born, all the planets were said to be in the 11th house except for Saturn. So Saturn went into the 12th house, and that became the reason for Indrajit's death. Now, the idea about telling this story is the significance of the 11th house. Now, Ravan was a great scholar of astrology. Also, many of you might have heard about one of the astrological treatises. It's called Ravan Sahinta. And so Ravana was a great scholar, and he knew the significance of the 11th house, and that is why he wanted all these planets to line up, in the 11th house. And Ravana was also, aware of the significance of the ninth house, because, like I mentioned, and you must have read also, that he was a great deal into dharma and into, the meditation and devotion towards, Lord Shiva. But when it came to deciding between the ninth and the 11th house, then for the Indrajit's, horoscope, then obviously, he preferred that all the planets should be in the 11th house. So what is the, this is a very interesting story. The moral of this story is that for the mundane success or for the material, prosperity, the 11th house is definitely, better than the ninth house. And and let's see, what these two houses, they traditionally signify. So the 11th house is for fulfillment of desire and wishes. And now, these four houses, 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th, these four houses, 9, 10, 11, and 12. These are the four purusharths, or the endeavor, that a person is expected to do in his or her lifetime. So ninth is the for dharma, 10th is for the earth. Earth means the profession or the business. 11th is for the calm, and 12th is for the moksha. Now, when we say calm for the 11th house, the calm doesn't mean sex, The calm comes from the word kamanai, which is a Sanskrit or a Hindi word, and the kamanai means desire. So 11th house is the house of desire, all kind of desire, right from having a good education, or buying a house, or success in examination, or going overseas, or being successful in business or politics, or just about anything. There are a lot of desires in a human's life, and in a person's life. And so the 11th house, the house of calm, means the house of Kamana, and so this is the house of desires. So fulfillment of desires, and all the wishes, and all the aspirations, wealth, and all the success in all undertaking. This is all seen, from the 11th house. All kind of gains are seen from the 11th house. And the ninth house is for faith and wisdom, and spiritual, welfare, for dharma. If somebody has to make a pilgrimage, then we usually look at the ninth house. If somebody wants to study, go for a higher education and read about, Vedas and all that, or somebody has to go and visit the ashram, then the ninth house, or somebody has to build a temple. So ninth house has mostly, to do with the dharma, right? And now, once upon a time, long back, in India, the dharma was always given the main preference over all other things. And so, for this reason, the uh, the the ninth house, became the main house of fortune or luck. See, you have to remember this, that the 11th house, which is for the calm, is not deemed to be a good house in Indian philosophy. Because in Indian philosophy, the whole concept of Maya originates, from the concept of desires, or the vasanae. So it is said that the whole world is created, or the whole vasana, or the whole Maya is generated because of the desires. Even in Buddhism, if you look at the the vasanas, or the desires, are treated as one of the fundamental issues in Buddhism, and it is said to be cause of all the miseries. So obviously, a philosophical tradition that looks at all desires and all, vasana and all the aspirations and all that from the point of view of misery is not going to, treat that house in a high, high respect. And so that's why, the ninth house was given more importance compared to the 11th house. And as the all our rishis and sages, of that time, they wanted the people to follow the dharma compared to, the calm or the kamanai. So it was said that the ninth house was, more lucky or more, fortunate compared to the 11th house. And when this ninth house, now if you look at a lot of these yogas, where ninth house is involved in forming, the yoga, then when second house, which is house of wealth, it joins hand with the ninth house, then some, dhana yoga is created according to, traditional astrology. But what kind of dhana yoga is created? Ninth house is for dharma. So they expect that person to have this money and use it, for charitable and all those purpose, not put it in the bank and start, raising some interest on it. Similarly for the third house is for writing and journey. So when it used to join hand with the ninth house, then it would give rise to some yoga about making, journeys to some holy river or some pilgrimage. Okay, it has nothing to do, by making journey to some, to some tourist place, like Bangkok or Europe or US, and similarly, for all, other houses. For example, eighth house. When eighth house used to join hands with the ninth house, the eighth house is for, mysticism and death related, studies and all that. So ninth house plus eighth house would have that person, take interest in understanding what death is, what life is, those kind of stuff. So, and the eighth house is also, the house of uh, insurance and legacy and, the unearned, income. So, but that the ninth house was not involved in providing, that kind of a benefit, and it was the focus was more on the dharmic, activity concerning the eighth house. Tenth house it was the same. A person was expected to do the earth part, which is the profession or the career, within the limits of the dharma. So this is how, ninth house was involved with various houses, forming, various kind of yogas, and but the upper hand was always, the dharmic principle. But today, what happens is when, people come to an astrologer, what are their questions? If you look at their questions, when they come to an astrologer, they are more interested, in a material prosperity, and they want to be successful in life. They want to earn money, and so the ninth house has lost, its relevance. It had its relevance long back, but in the current, Kali Yuga, the ninth house has lost, its relevance. And I have even seen, priests coming to me, and their temples have not been running, properly, or they were, pressed financially hard, and so they also wanted me to, look at their horoscope and find out when they will start, earning some money. So even the whole profession side and all that is now more, inclined towards the 11th house, which is for the material gain. So now when 11th house, joins hand with other houses, then it creates, all these material gain. For example, 2 plus 11, second house plus 11th house is increase in bank balance. 3 plus 11 is, making successful short journeys, or, becoming a good salesman, or even earning money, from writing novels and other publication. Fourth house is earning money, from a house or vehicle. And the fifth house, now, once upon a time, fifth house, or today also, your fifth house is said to be the house of Mantra Siddhi. So, but who is interested in Mantra Siddhi? Nobody is interested in Mantra Siddhi. If a person comes to you and if they want to analyze their, fifth house, and if you see that their fifth house has some relation with the ninth house, which is for the dharma, and then you know that there is a good yoga for the mantra siddhi, and if you try to tell them, they get disappointed. They are not interested, in the mantra siddhi. They are interested in the material side of the fifth house, which is what it is, speculation. So they want to know if they invest in certain stocks, what kind of return they are going to get. So at that time, you can't have 5 plus, 9 forming as any yoga. You can then have fifth house plus the 11th house, that will, that is how you can tell them if they are going to win, in a horse race, or they can win in some stocks or speculation and things like that. So the idea is that in the Kali Yuga, the 11th house is really, the house of luck and fortune, because the collective, the I would say the collective consciousness of this age is more inclined, toward the material success, material prosperity. Those are the questions, you get most of the time as an astrologer. At least I get most of the time as an astrologer. It is all about, winning competition and things like that. So this is a very, deep finding, or I would say observation from Krishnamurti, where, Krishnamurti gave, prime importance to the 11th house. If you read Krishnamurti's, books and go through all his examples, you will always find, the 11th house is considered. Whenever the 11th house in picture, then the outcome is always, going to be positive. So more the 11th house is strong, more you have the significators of the 11th house, more a person is going to be materially strong. And once a person has a lot of money in his or her bank account, then a person is able to lead a very successful life according to, the current Kali Yuga trend. So now I hope you got a feel of uh, uh, why, the Krishnamurti has given, importance to the 11th house. And see, when I told you the story about the Ravan son Indrajit, so even at that time, at the time of Ravan, which might be 100,000 years ago, the Ravan was aware that the 11th house is for the house of material, prosperity. So it's not that our rishis were not aware that the 11th house is house of material, prosperity. But like I mentioned, the core Vedantic philosophy is more, uh, inclined towards the ninth house for some reason, which I'm not going to discuss here. And so that's why, the ninth house was deemed to be house of fortune and house of luck. And so these days, when a person, comes to you, don't look at the ninth house. In Krishnamurti Paddhati, these the good six houses, for a person are 1, 2, 3, 6, 10, 11, and rest of the houses are good for the other person, not for you. If you look at the good houses, even ninth house is not even mentioned over here. And ninth house is not negative, but ninth house is a very passive house, so it is not given, much significance. So if you have to recommend, any uh, a gemstone, or if you have to suggest any muhurt, or if you have to assess the degree of success or failure, one is going to have in his or her lifetime, then you have to look at the 11th house. And even if you are, following the traditional astrology, I would still advise you to pay, more attention to the 11th house. Like I mentioned, the rishis were aware that the 11th house is indeed the house of, material prosperity. And but they always emphasize, the importance of the signification of ninth house. So pay proper attention to the 11th house, whether you are following, traditional astrology, or if you follow KP, then obviously, you have to pay attention to the 11th house. Now let me take an example, the horoscope, and show you the difference. Now this is, these are two, horoscope, and Now, if you look at this horoscope, you see a lot of these planets, in the 10th house. And but if you look at this horoscope, you see more planets, in the 11th house. And if you look at the significators, then you will find that most of the significators in this horoscope, they have a connection with the 10th house, right? A lot of these planets, most of them have connection with the 10th house. But if you carefully look, at this, then you will find that the 11th house is missing. There are a lot of, connection with the 10th, but the connection with the 11th is not very prominent. So, prima facie, when you look at this horoscope, you say, okay, this person, will be interested in politics, and he will have a very successful, professional life, and he will rise in his career, and those kind of things by looking at his 10th house and the kind of planets you have in the 10th house. And even by looking at this the list of the significators, you will get the same feeling. And but if you look at this, then you will see that it has these the 11th house appears in the as a significator in lot many places compared to this house. So what I'm trying to say is that even this person has a lot of influence of the 10th house, but since the 11th house is missing, and the 11th house is the house of fulfillment of desire. So whatever desire this person has about rising in his or her career will not be, he will be not fully satisfied. I would say he would be disappointed. I know this person, and this person had that kind of a political ambition, but he couldn't do anything. I mean, you have these very petty, kind of a politician in some obscure town or city that you haven't heard of. So ultimately, that is the fate he had. Why? Because of the lack of the 11th house. And this, the house that this horoscope that you see on the right side, this is of Donald Trump, right? So now he's the president of US. So the idea is when you're looking, at the horoscope, pay proper attention to the 11th house. More the 11th house is there, more signification, more emphasis, more strong, more the planets are connected with the 11th house, more the person is going to be happy in his life. And more it is, connected with the ninth house, is not going to. And if the person asks the question about the material prosperity and has a lot of, influence or signification for the ninth house, then obviously, your answer is going to be a negative. So that is all in this way in this video. Thanks for watching.